What is up, fellas, and welcome to another episode of Rewriting History with me, the Goob. So I had an announcement planned for today, but that has been pushed back to tomorrow just due to scheduling issues, just trying to get people on the stream at the same time, but very excited for that tomorrow. That should be very cool. Hopefully you all tune in. Maybe you guys can share it. But figured I'd do a stream anyways, as I didn't have anything prepared really because, I was planning to do the presentation. But there's a few little things I can talk about. Let me pull it up here so that you guys can see it too. Little update on the vases. So been a little bit since I've talked about the predynastic vases. Stein-Gerdes. She is still working on doing analysis. Here we go. Okay. Great person to follow if you're interested in the vases. And she recently updated the lug handles. So here's a CT scan of some of the lug handles. And there's some pretty interesting things to see here. It's not quite as easy to tell on this one, but it would seem that all of these lug handles were drilled from both sides. You can see a little bit of a transition of like thickness there, but it's very, very obvious to see here. And let's see if I can enlarge this a little bit. So if you look closely, let's see if I can zoom in here. If you're looking at this closely, you can clearly see not only are they misaligned, one, they seem to be pretty darn cylindrical. But also, if you look here, there's not a tip on this drill bit. It does seem to be drilled with something like a copper tube drill, perhaps. And this is PV001. So if we go to Stein-Gerdes' website, share this tab instead, PV001, let me find it. That's this right here. That is the most precise granite vase that's been measured so far. This is one of Matt Bell's vases. It's his finest vase. So over on this page, right, you have the vases that were scanned by Max Fomichev, sorry. And that's this vase down here, the V18. So the most precise vase of Matt Bell's collection is also the most precise vase in Stein-Gerdes' analysis. And these are the handles, right? This is what the handles look like on that vase. Pretty interesting. That I'm not a drilling expert, but that doesn't look necessarily like a modern drill bit, or maybe it does. I don't know. But they're very clearly drilled from both sides. And then there's some additional pictures of other handles. These ones are somewhat curved. This one's definitely curved. I don't see how you do that with a modern drill bit. Modern drill bits are fairly rigid, but could a copper tube, a thin copper tube that you're rotating, could that warp a little bit and bend? Perhaps. So is this evidence that would suggest that this vase is ancient? The PV001 vase is PV001. Which one is that? Here's the MVs. Is it on here? RV, PV. Okay, I don't actually see it on here. So I'm not sure which PV002 is. But yeah, the path there is curved. Not sure what modern tool or drill would be doing that. And I'm not even sure if a copper tube drill would do that, but perhaps it would. This is PV010. Again, you can see pretty rough. It's tapered from both sides. They seem to meet right there, but it's thicker on the edges. This has multiple drill holes, if you will. There's one thickness here, another thickness, and then a third thickness. I'd be kind of shocked and surprised if this was done with modern tools here, like you're using multiple drill bits of different sizes and doing kind of a poor job. I don't know. It's interesting data though. It's interesting data seeing the handles. This was one of the more precise vases, the beehive vase. Again, it seems pretty clear that it's coming from both sides. You have it coming in here and then coming in here. Try to find, and I guess the reason for this would be that, you know, you're less likely to chip the vase if you do it that way. So even with modern tools, it does sort of make sense to go from both sides. But having the different sized holes, would you, if you have a modern tool, modern drill with a modern drill bit from both sides, like, I don't know why you'd be using different sizes. I also don't know how you would get that bending and curving in there. So, you know, is that a potential piece of evidence that these are legitimately ancient? It possibly is. And then Max Fomichev, I struggle with his name a little bit. He has continued doing analysis on vases, and here he has the original vases from Matt Bell's collection that he scanned, the two vases that were recreated by the Scientists Against Myths team, the precise vases that are right. So these are also potentially ancient vases, and these are potentially ancient vases, the green and the blue both. But these are the imprecise class, and this is the very precise class, V18, way down here. This is the same thing as this, except this scale is logarithmic. You see 5 has this much space, 50 to 100 has this much space, whereas this scale, he put it directly. So you can actually see the difference. These are the modern vases over here. That were, you know, like the modern marble vase and such that were scanned. And you can definitely see that there is an additional level of precision in these ancient vases. Now, does that mean that they're actually ancient? I mean, if they were not necessarily, if these are modern, you know, why are they higher quality than the vases we produce today? Well, these are, if they're modern, intended to be forgeries. So maybe they're just putting extra effort into them. It is obviously a different workshop. The workshop that's producing these is Trinkets isn't producing these. So again, you know, it's nothing definitive either way, but it is very interesting to see the distribution of precision here. Ancient vases that are handmade over here, very imprecise. The V8, awful. You know, the handmade vases by Scientists Against Myths, and even when they were using ball bearings to help them, there's still magnitudes of order, you know, less precise than the precise ancient vases. So, oh, wasn't showing that. Fuck me. Why won't it show it? It doesn't want to show. It won't pull it up. Okay, there we go. So yeah, I apologize. I was just showing these graphs. This is the non-logarithmic graph. The blue vases, ancient handmade vases, red vases, the modern Scientists Against Myths vases, green vases, ancient precise vessels, yellow is the modern, you know, marble vases and such. And then this was the old logarithmic graph where, you know, 100 to 50 is less space than 1 to 5. So this gives a better idea of the scale of the difference of precision here. But that's all I had for the vases. Just a quick update on the vases. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the Trydactyl mummies. The Trydactyl mummies I haven't talked about in a while. They're, unfortunately, it's still just as muddy, just as murky, just as unclear what's actually going on with them. You know, the people who should be interacting with them still refuse to. No bioarchaeologist is willing to inspect them in person, but continually more and more people have inspected them. Dentists and surgeons and average citizens, and everyone who's interacted with them seems to be coming away with the idea that they are legitimate. My StreamYard is messed up. Something is not working right here. I don't know what's going on, but it's not responding. I'm pretty sure I'm still streaming and everything is fine. I just can't. Okay, whatever. It's just messed up on my side. I'm pretty sure I'll just deal with it. So yeah, so like I was leaning towards the humanoid mummies being real already, and I'm still leaning towards that. It seems that very, very slow. Like there's no smoking guns coming out. I wish there was like some big revelation I could point to either go, oh, these are fake or these are real. It's just a very slow trickle of murky, muddy water though. But I wanted to talk about them from a slightly different angle. Let's assume that the mummies are modern forgeries. Let's just go ahead and assume that the mummies are absolutely modern forgeries. There were no Trydactyls 2,000 years ago. That still leaves the skulls. The skulls are legitimate, elongated skulls. There's no way to manipulate a skull after a person is dead to make it elongated like that. And these aren't fake skulls, right? They're real human skulls, and they're really elongated. They have different proportions than us. Larger eye sockets, elongated craniums, potentially missing sutures. And this is something that I think is in the same kind of vein as diffusion to America. There is a massive abundance of evidence of diffusion to America, but it's never talked about other than to dismiss it by mainstream archaeologists. And good luck finding that evidence. Like it's out there, it exists, but Google is not going to show you. I've talked many times about how like I'll be looking for a specific thing. I know what I'm looking for. I know it exists, and I'm just trying to find it again, and it's just totally unavailable through Google. So the same thing with diffusion and these elongated skulls seems to be happening. Like this is an absolute no-go zone for the mainstream. And there seems to very clearly be obfuscation and cover up going on here. These skulls are found all around the world. They're almost always associated with nobility. Like in every part of the world that they're found, universally, it's the leaders and the nobles and the important people that have their skulls elongated. And this lack of sagittal suture is also found around the world, from South America to Russia to Spain, and I'm sure many, many other places, right? The extra cranial volume. So you have what seems to be two distinct groups of elongated skulls. You have ones that seem like they're potentially naturally elongated because they have, like I said, larger eye sockets, missing sutures, and they just look larger, right? They look, you can put them next to a normal skull and they look way bigger. And then you have elongated skulls, which are clearly from, headboarding. They're from binding, and they are elongated, and you can put them right next to those other elongated skulls I was just talking about. And again, they look smaller. They don't have the massive eye sockets. They look smaller. So, there's, whether they were Trydactyls or not, there's something here with the mummies. There's something here with the skulls. There's something going on. There seems to have been another group of hominids, another group of humans that, for whatever reason, mainstream absolutely will not touch. They refuse to acknowledge it. These skulls have been found for a very long time. We've been aware of them for a very long time. And I'm sure there's studies that have been done on them, but like finding evidence of diffusion, it's impossible to pull them up through Google. The very few studies that you'll get are often dismissing them, or they're just like not thorough. They're not actually providing a lot of good information. There's seems to be a correlation as well between these megalithic structures that we find, like Malta in Spain, Peru covered in megaliths, Russia. Like, I don't know how strong that correlation is, because again, finding information on these elongated skulls, damn near impossible. But there does seem to be a correlation with these megalithic structures and the elongated skulls. everyone's looking for the Atlanteans, these 12,000-year-old Atlanteans. But these elongated skull people, they existed 1,500 years ago. They were walking around the world 1,500 years ago, which is when India was building their megalithic structures, right? That's when Peru was building their megalithic structures. So we have these abnormal hominids in the same places and same times as these megalithic structures. And like, as far as I know, there is absolutely no type of mainstream interest or study in this. It just doesn't exist. And I don't think it's something that's been properly pursued by the alternates yet either. I know people talk about them. I know people have talked about similar things that I'm saying now, but like, actual work needs to be done. These skulls need inspected. We need DNA tests. We need to map them out. Where are they actually found? How strong is that correlation between these megalithic sites and these skulls? You know, what is the actual volume of these skulls? There's been like rice studies, and then there's been contradictory rice studies. So we need much more comprehensive study on these elongated skulls. And even if, like I said, even if the Trydactyls are fake, which I don't think they necessarily are, you still have the mystery of the skulls. That should be getting investigated by archaeologists, by bioarchaeologists, but they refuse to touch them because aliens, right? It's a hoax. So even if it is a hoax, the skulls are real. Look at the skulls, check them out, but they won't. What's up, TZ? Good to see you here. I don't know if I've seen you before. I think you're new, but good to see a new face. If anyone wants to call in, you're welcome to. Like I said, I really didn't have much content for today. I just wanted to talk about the skulls a little bit, and that idea that even if the Trydactyl mummies are fake, the skulls aren't. The skulls aren't, and they're a real mystery, and they need investigated. So, you know, regardless of how you look at these mummies, it's ridiculous that the mainstream just refuses to touch them. It's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, I'm very excited to present what I have to present, hopefully tomorrow. I'm pretty sure we're confirmed for 6 p.m. tomorrow, but it's tough getting, you know, people around the world on the same stream at the same time. Obviously, I'm going to talk about it tomorrow, so I'm not going to talk about it today, but I'm excited. It's a really important project that I think is really going to benefit the community and everybody. So, yeah, I don't have much else to add. This is just a chill sesh. If anyone wants to call in, you're welcome to. If you want to talk about any topics, feel free. There's 2 other things I'll talk about. One is the flame war between archaeologists and I'll wait. I'll talk about this in a minute because Mike G just called in, so I'm going to answer his call and see what he has to say. What's up, Mike?
Good. Can you hear me?
How you doing?
Good. I can't complain. I was listening to you talk about those the skulls, right? Didn't they isn't it like the Incas or one of those tribes there that those dudes were supposed to be like the leaders of, right?
Everywhere. That's the case everywhere. So there's a couple exceptions in Africa, but around the world, the elongated skulls are associated with nobility.
Okay, that's what I thought. And I think that's I mean, yeah, like they're all about saying there's all these other little, you know, the little hominids that the Hobbit people or whatever on that island, and then the Denisovans. So we're cool with those ones, right? And I just heard something about there being another one they found, but I didn't look into what it was, right? But then they're not gonna acknowledge, like they really haven't said anything that they, you know, like academia or you know, what am I trying to say here? You know who I'm talking about, that they like not
no. They just won't address it. They really don't.
At all, right? Yeah. Like or they just give it a little bit of a hand wave with the you know, the head binding thing, and that's it. You know, it's like, it's really weird actually to me.
Yeah, there's been, like you said, they'll address it very casually. It's like, oh yeah, there's cradle boarding. It's no big deal. And it's like, okay, you have no interest in learning more about these at all, and they go, no, it's just cradle boarding. There's nothing to see here.
Right. Oh, right. And that they were the leaders, and that they just, you know, everybody imitated them. And the other thing is, like, the way that, why would they be the leaders with that thing? You know what I mean? Why would only those who, like, is this, it does show, like, I don't know. I always think about, like, in academia, how it works is if you go to write your paper and it goes against any grain, right? You're just not going to pass. That's it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're
Like, period.
done working after that, pretty much.
Right, right. So therefore, that's the way you can easily just quash any kind of discussion about that thing and when
Yeah.
what they're, and because that there's gotta be curiosity about it, but
it seems kind of cargo cultish to me, right? Like how you're saying it's always
right,
associated with the nobles, and then you do have other people that are trying to replicate that. You know, you have the two categories of skulls. You got the really big
right,
ones, and then you have the replication ones. Yeah, so it's like, okay, so you have this group of people coming in with the big heads. They start building megalithic sites, teaching you how to do all this
right.
stuff. You start binding your head. And then we find these common patterns all over the world, including the skulls, along with this remarkable masonry. And
Right.
yeah.
Right. Nothing.
And that's
right.
it.
Right. The other thing is, like, one of the things I heard, and again, like, you hear crap, right? Like, but about there being, like, tunnel systems through the earth going basically from, like, Egypt to the United States, going from Africa to the United States, going up into, like, from Africa into all the way up to Britain through Europe. And then, I don't know, I saw a picture of it, but I've heard, like, this thing about, like, the Egyptians, what they found, when they say that they found the stuff in the Grand Canyon, right? Theoretically, all that stuff's named after Egypt, and there's a spot you're not supposed to be able to go. And they wrote this article in the paper a long time ago, it was supposed to be maybe an April Fool's joke, saying we found hieroglyphs and stuff in there, right? And then there was this one thing I heard, the guy said something interesting. It was just that the reason they couldn't show it was because what it said was that the people had come there through tunnels under the ground. And it wasn't necessarily so much that they were there, but it was more that how they got there was the real problem, that the tunnels that go under the ground, or not tunnels. Let me rephrase it. Maybe caves, but they didn't say tunnels. They didn't use the word tunnels. You know what I mean?
I'm pretty skeptical about that, interconnected across continents under the oceans and such. That's a bit
right.
Much. But there are massive tunnel networks all around the world. The extent of there was a video uploaded a few days ago of a guy who he's walking around the Giza Plateau, and he's like, there's over 100 entrances underground right here, right on the Giza Plateau. And he's just walking and like you look on his camera and you can see just like all of the little doorways popping up out of the sand, and he's just walking from one to the other, sticking his camera in, going, look, here's a room here, and they're all filled with trash.
Wow.
By the way. Every single one is just filled with garbage, like literal garbage, plastic bottles and stuff like that, which is terrible. But yeah, he sticks his camera in and he's looking around. I might even link it in the description because I was just watching it earlier today and it was interesting.
Yeah,
and
cool.
The underground stuff is another thing that does seem to be the lack of attention seems deliberate because it's so extensive and it's very strongly associated with these megalithic sites, Egypt being a good example. Anywhere you're finding these massive structures above ground, you're almost guaranteed that they're below ground too. And even people visiting these sites often have no idea that they're walking.
That it's like that. Right. What time are you going to do your stream tomorrow?
I think 6 p.m. It should be 6 p.m., but I will let the Discord know because I think it's 6 p.m. I'm not 100% sure still.
Word. Right on. I might be at work, but I'll try to tune in. I'll tune in if I'm not, but
cool.
All right, Doc. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for calling.
Later. Yep.
Later. So one of the things that Michael was touching on there is the conformity within academia. They go through school, they, the training every step of the way is conform or else. And so there's been this ongoing flame war since the Dibble debate between alternates and mainstream, and it's gotten ugly on both sides. But I'm going to make a prediction, which is that Dibble put out his call to action a couple weeks ago, and I mentioned it, a couple weeks ago. And I think that you're going to start seeing the archaeologists conforming to that. We have watched archaeologists to a mind-blowing level, adhere to their self-destructive behavior and just double down on this strategy of attacking alternate people with absolutely nothing but negative results for the mainstream, right? They were only hurting themselves. They've done this for so long and so adamantly, it's hard to imagine them doing anything else. But I think you're going to see pretty immediately, you're going to notice that they're going to start backing off on this flame war. They're going to stop attacking the individuals the way that they've done it. They're going to focus more on dismissing their arguments, which is the way it should be done, quite frankly. But they're not gonna be honest. They're still gonna be archaeologists in their dismissals, right? But I do think they are going to try and return a sense of decorum, right? Try and go back to some of the standards that they used to have in interacting with the public. And that's all a great thing. The problem is that the flame war, right up until now, has reached its peak, right? It's at its most aggressive on both sides. They had just launched a very coordinated campaign of attack against the alternates. And now I think they're going to immediately back off and start their, oh no, we're the good ones. We have good behavior, right? And if the alternates maintain this same level of aggression, I think that it can very quickly have a rebound effect where all of the progress, all of the trust that's been shifted from the mainstream to the alternate could immediately shift right back, right? If they start acting nicely and they throw a couple sacrificial pawns, I think you might see Professor Dave, he might get sacrificed here. They might turn on him. They might even turn on Zahi Hawass. I think it's a very real possibility that Zahi Hawass gets thrown under the bus and he gets out and they go, yeah, we've had issues with them for a long time. They're going to try and act as if there's a few bad apples and the mainstream are the reasonable, rational people, and the alternate with their crazy attacks are, the angry, irrational psychos. So I'm a little bit worried about that. We'll see what happens, but I think that's a very real possibility. And I hope that if that does happen, the alternates figure it out quickly and they stop making these personal attacks, especially non-archaeological personal attacks. Like when you're going after someone for things that have happened in their personal life, oh, you went through an ugly divorce, oh, you were involved in whatever, that isn't going to look good if the arcs back off and they start attacking the arguments and you're still attacking them personally. It's not going to look good. People's attention spans are short, people's memory spans are short, and they will default back to trusting the mainstream very, very quickly. The other thing, the last and final thing, which has nothing to do with anything, I was getting poltergeisted this week, dude. I had a very strange experience. I was in my kitchen. I walk in, I'm going to cook myself some food. So I put a pan on the stove. I turn the stove on. I put some lard in my microwave to soften it up a little bit. I turn on the microwave and then bam, a gunshot goes off right next to my head in my kitchen. And so I jump. I'm like, what the fuck? My ear is ringing, like my right ear, because it went off right next to my head. My ear is ringing. It was painfully loud. It was like a gunshot. Absolutely nothing in my kitchen. There's nothing there. So I'm looking around. I'm looking at my glass stovetop. I was like, did it break somehow? I'm looking at my granite countertops. I'm like, did they crack or something? What the hell is that noise? Absolutely nothing. There was nothing that could have made that noise. There was nothing in my kitchen. And it was very much right next to my head because my left ear heard it, but not nearly as loud. It was a very local sound, like a gunshot that was held, maybe a foot away from my head and fired is exactly what it sounded like. And then after about a minute of me being very confused, my cabinets flew open and things started flying out of them. I'm not even joking. I don't know what was happening. And then that was it. It ended. One of my cabinets flew open, things started flying out, and then nothing else happened. I'm not particularly a believer in ghosts and supernatural stuff, but I don't know what that was. It was a strange experience. I just continued cooking my food and acted like nothing happened, but something definitely happened. I have no idea what it was. Just felt like sharing. Yeah, you know, and that is honestly like something that occurred to me. And there is one potential maybe possibility. Like my windows were open. My kitchen windows were open. It sounded super duper local. It really, really sounded super local, but potentially some kind of directed sound. And I'm not even talking about a device. I'm just saying like some things can happen where a sound is very directed. Like if it was shot somehow straight through my window and just straight into my ear, I don't know, man. I don't know, but it was strange. But that's it. That's the show. Thanks for tuning in. Please do tune in tomorrow. If you can share it. You know, I'm excited for tomorrow. So tune in. Don't miss that. And I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.